And when you have more than that amount, that's when we tend to start finding things to buy. And you can probably think of times in your life where you did this, where you got a big paycheck and you all of a sudden started just like noticing things that you wanted to buy. You started thinking about things you could splurge and buy until you get back down to that comfort zone. And vice versa, if you ever go below that amount, is usually the only time most people are willing to finally reel back their impulses and say, okay, I need to stop spending so much money in this area until you get back to your comfort zone. So one of the keys to building wealth is increasing your thermostat so that when you have $1,000 or $2,000 in your account or $5,000 in your account, you don't feel like you have a bunch of expendable money that you can go out and buy a $1,500 suit with, or take a trip, with your friends and buying drinks every night. And that stuff adds up really fast. And what I recommend to kind of help curb that is you should for sure from the beginning try and have 2 checking accounts that you're operating out of. And I would recommend, if you're not incorporated, you don't need a business checking account specifically. You can just open a personal checking account, and until you're incorporated, there's some benefits to that. For example, a lot of business checking accounts, there's a minimum fee, every month you're paying for it because it's a business account. There's also a lot of time minimum amounts you have to keep in a business checking account. And if you go below that, you sometimes get charged fees. Whereas a personal checking account, they're oftentimes going to be free. So I would recommend just set up another personal checking account, and you can open it at another bank if you need to and link them really easily. But in essence, you're going to have one checking account that you're going to have all of your vector commission statements be deposited into. And that is going to operate as your business account. And then you are going to transfer the amount of money that it takes for you to pay your personal bills like an employee. And this is what I would suggest is pay yourself like an employee in the sense of your first commission check of the month, pay yourself half of what it costs you to live personally. So if you spend $1,200 a month on your personal bills, pay yourself $600 on your first commission run of the month, and then pay yourself $600 on the third commission run in the month, equivalent to like paying yourself on the 1st and the 15th of the month. And you could do it a quarter, a quarter of what you need for your personal bills each week. That's fine. The most important part is that you are intentional about how much you want to be spending personally before the month happens. It doesn't mean that you can't plan to spend more money and buy yourself a nice suit or have a nice trip, but it should be something that you're intentional about before the month comes, not something that you decide Friday night when you're at the bar with your friends. So in that case, pay yourself like an employee and try and stick to living off of that budget for yourself, and then keep the rest of the funds in your business checking account and operate your business out of that. And what will happen at the end of the summer is you're going to have a nice lump of money sitting there because it's been staying in there. So the next one is do delay gratification from now until August. This again is one of those things that's going to probably manifest itself in a lot of different ways. It might mean going to bed a little earlier each night, maybe watching 1 or 2 less episodes of Netflix or Hulu so you can actually wake up in the morning and have the energy that you need to be the best version of yourself for your team, and more importantly for yourself. So you actually do the things that you're telling yourself you want to be doing because you got enough sleep. It might mean actually in this time that some of you might not have school where you were originally planning on having school. Instead of just wasting the time, it might mean actually spending time studying, training, reaching out to managers who are killing it at the virtual program and finding out what they're doing so you can hone your craft before you go out. It might mean waking up a little early in the morning so you can actually have the 15 minutes necessary to pack a lunch for yourself. So again, you're not faced with being with no food because you ran out the door in the morning and weren't prepared. But the more you can be willing to delay your gratification for the next 6 months and just do what's right versus doing what's easy or what feels good in the moment is going to really pay huge dividends for your profitability this year. This next one is one that I think is really important because I don't think buying a lot of new furniture impacts CPO very much at all, if any. Buying a brand new desk for $1,000 versus getting it used at a thrift store for $100 is probably going to create the same amount of CPO. And the only time I sometimes saw managers spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on furniture was because they didn't do any legwork before they opened to actually find the furniture, or ask people that they know if they knew anyone that was potentially looking to get rid of some old furniture. So this is something that I would definitely be doing to try and get all your furniture lined up. I understand that with this COVID-19 stuff, the office space situation could be different. But what I would recommend is make sure that you guys are being creative. And, you know, in some of these scenarios, there might be some businesses that are going to be closing their doors over the next month or two that could be getting rid of furniture at a really great price. And I would definitely be keeping your eyes open. I'd definitely be putting posts on social media, letting people know that you're opening an office for your company this summer and you're looking for some used office furniture that you could buy really cheap, or if you're a branch, potentially even rent it for the summer. I remember Michael Hine in a branch in our office when he opened his first summer, he ended up borrowing most of his furniture for his branch from his church because their lowest attendance time of the year is the summer. But they let him take 40 chairs, they let him have a couple desks, a few whiteboards, and a few office chairs, and they just let him have them for free for the summer, and he brought them back in August. So you never know until you ask, but you should try and get all of that stuff lined up before you go out. This next one, again, in a virtual conference environment, this might change a little bit, but one of the things that is important is when you take your team to a conference, you're going to get all of the reps on your team's Cutco product, and your job is to give it to each person on your team that came to the conference. Well, there might be some people who charged a conference to their commission account. It's possible. It's not always a thing that's possible in every region or every division, but if that is ever the scenario, just make sure you don't give those reps the product until they've paid off their conference, because you end up getting charged for that if they don't end up selling enough to clear it. So just hang on to the Cutco until they've cleared it for themselves. This next one you'll notice is the first bolded one on here, which is make sure you order fast start prizes the week they're earned for your team. I see a lot of new managers do this where they have a month where there's like no fast start prize. I'm like, did you not have any fast starters? And they're like, oh shoot, no, it's been crazy busy. I need to do that. And when you go 2-3 weeks of just being forgetful because you're busy and you forget to order those fast start prizes, there is a lot of CPO left on the table in that scenario. And it's also your first opportunity as the manager to show your team that Vector honors their commitments. If there's a contest where if you do this, you get this, this is the first opportunity to show them that Vector, one, not only does it, but does it right away. And 2 weeks of demos without those fast start prizes is a lot of CPO left on the table there for yourself. So make sure that you're ordering fast start prizes within the week that they're earned. This next one is also important because you want to make sure that you order them in the proper section of Vector Connect. I started coaching a district manager last summer, and they decided they didn't use Rising Stock services her first summer. I started coaching her last summer. And by the end of the summer, I was like, why are you spending so much in fast start prizes? Like, your productivity is not representative of how much you spend on fast start prizes. And really what it boiled down to is she was ordering the fast start prizes on her manager discount, not in the fast start section of Vector Connect. And if you're not familiar with this, your normal manager discount is 1/3 of the normal price of Cutco. Well, your discount to order fast start prizes for the reps on your team is 1/6. So it's half the price. So she, in essence, paid twice as much on fast start prizes for over a year before she realized that. So make sure you order them in the right section. This next one, do use Cutco to barter. And what I would say for this is an ongoing thing that as long as you're a manager, you should always try and look for opportunities where you can trade Cutco for a service or product that you're already going to be purchasing anyway. And by the way, for your landlord, it might be something you can only do for a month of rent. But if you've got $1,000 in rent and you're able to trade them a homemaker or a galley set, you know, that might have saved you $600-700 that month. And they might fall in love with Cutco and then realize a year later they want to do that again because they want to get a set of Cutco for someone else, and they'd be willing to trade you for another month of rent. I got LASIK eye surgery for trading 2 homemakers to a guy that I met at a fair and show, selling some Cutco my first fall as a DM. He's like, oh yeah, I know about Cutco. And we started talking, and basically we started talking like, hey, would you ever be open to trading? I'd love LASIK eye surgery. And I got a $3,000 procedure, you know, for basically trading 2 homemakers. And that was a good gig. Next, don't use next day and 2-day shipping. It says red and blue label, but that's basically what it is. Next day and 2-day shipping. And ultimately, this is kind of the crux of like new DMs or new branches forget to order fast start prizes. Sometimes they forget to order base pay. And sometimes they forget to check what they have of everything in their office until it's time to run training. And they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough blue books to run training. I need to order 20 blue books on next day shipping right now. And they'll order $50 worth of blue books and spend $80 in shipping. And that's something that you can avoid really easily. All of those are things that you can avoid really easily if you do one thing, which is if you have an admin hour in your schedule every single week of the summer. And what I recommend is have Tuesday be the day. I like Tuesday personally because fast start sheets typically are turned in Monday. Base pay is turned in on Monday. So you can bust both of those out before training starts on Wednesday. And it also gives you a chance to check inventory. If you're doing base pay, you can verify demos before you pay the base pay. Those are all great things to be getting done in your admin hour. And if you have any receptionists, paying your receptionist, Tuesday was usually the day that I did that as well. So make sure that if you've already done your cap and you don't have an admin hour in your schedule, it's absolutely something that you want to have in your schedule. And you want to protect that time. And if you've got an AM, I would make sure that you have an AM that's watching you every single week in that admin hour so that you can eventually be teaching them how to do those things. So you're not always the one that are doing those. You know, you don't need to be the one checking inventory levels. That could be something an assistant manager is doing during that admin hour. You just are the one that's placing the order and making, you know, the payment, confirming the charge. Next, don't get in the habit of taking reps and AMs out to eat. And this is something that possibly you have done with your manager. It might be something you really appreciate that you've got to do with your manager, but realize that your manager is in a different financial place than you are. And it's not something that you really should be doing very often, if at all, in your first summer or two. And really, the point is to spend time building a relationship with your top people. And you don't have to go buy a meal to do that. You could go for a walk. You could go grab a coffee or a tea. You know, it's really about getting time with you. So don't always make it about going out to eat because that's maybe something you've experienced as a rep or an AM. This next one might seem like a no-brainer, but don't co-sign on anything. Unless you're married to them, you probably shouldn't be co-signing on it. But some of your reps might view you as one of the most successful people, and you might be one of the most successful people they've ever met. And that might lead them to actually ask you if you would be willing to help them get their first car or, you know, something like that. And you just really don't want to go down that path. Next, do learn to get really good at promoting the numerous contests that Vector supports. The key thing is you really don't need a bunch of your own contests at all in your first year, in my opinion. There are so many different contests you can be promoting as a manager that are really exciting for your team. You just want to get good at promoting those contests. And a good action item for you, if you're not currently involved in running your team meetings right now before you go out, I would be volunteering to do some type of promotion at some of the team meetings over the next 3-4 weeks. Volunteer to be the one actually doing promotions for a week. Ask if you could, you know, promote key staff or K Club or the All-American Scholarship. And what you'll learn, if you haven't practiced that very much yet, you're probably going to stink at it. And you're going to be like, wow, that was really lame the first time or two. And better to learn that on your manager's team than on your own team this summer, truly. So I would practice, and then after you do it, watch your manager the next week when they do it after you, and you'll realize some of those things that you could be better at promoting on those certain things. And that is a skill that you're going to hone as a new manager. If you are going to have any additional contests, though, just make sure that you're smart about it and talk to your DVM to make sure that financially makes sense. It shouldn't be something that's so easy for everyone on your team to attain that it ends up costing you way more money than the profit it generated, because that defeats the whole purpose of having any contest ever. All right. So next, all the rest of the do's and don'ts are on a handout, and Kathy will send that out after my message. So let's talk about your commission statements really fast. You can see, by the way, this is intentional. You're not really supposed to be seeing the details on this, but this is a branch manager's commission statement. And you can see they're pretty long compared to what most of your FSM checks look like. So your commission statements are in essence going to be broken up into two parts: the earnings piece of your commission statement and the charges piece of your commission statement. So for this branch right here, you can see, you can probably kind of see this, it's kind of blurry, and I apologize, when I imported it into this Google slide here, it didn't format properly. But this branch did 19,000 CPO for the week. And you can see all the different reps that they had, and you can see the percentage that this manager was earning on these different representatives. And you can see, by the way, there's some that are at 25%. So those are like the brand new reps that are between 0 and 1,000 in sales. And then they've got 20%, 15%, 10%. So each of those different tiers, basically their reps are promoted and that manager is making a little bit less. As the rep goes up, the manager goes down. That's how we're able to pay reps 50%, is the manager has a little give too. Now, so on this 19,000 CPO that this branch did for the week, they were paid $32.66. Now, you can also see they earned 75 cents from someone in their office selling a bag of Utopian coffee, woohoo. And then they also have an AM on their team as well, which they are at 1%. And so that means they made $194, which on 19,400 CPO makes sense. And you as a manager only pay half of what you pay your AMs, up to 3%. And then Vector pays the other half. So of this $194, this branch paid $97 of that this week. All following so far? All right. So when it comes to the charges piece of the commission statement, so this is on page 2 of this manager's commission statement, you can see we've got tons of charges here. We have $1,600 of charges. Now, by the way, not all of these are charges. A good chunk of this is money that this manager is saving, and they're not true charges. And you'll see that here in a second. So we can see we've got a $127 charge here for base pay. And then we also have a text to schedule charge right here for $90 for this manager. And this, then the text to schedule, I'm not sure how you guys are doing it in your region. Some regions, the managers pay for it all up front out of their startup. And then there's other regions where they pay maybe half of it up front and then they split the rest of it up over a bunch of weeks. I'm not sure how your region is doing it, but it's going to be one of those things. So you'll see text to schedule charges on there. You can see this is charge 2 of Paris. And if you're not familiar with how the company handles company trips, they assume you're going to qualify at least at the minimum level, which is a 50% of the trip is paid. And so they have you set aside a little bit of money out of each paycheck each week to cover the other 50%. So when you qualify for the trip, you've got that money saved so you can go on the trip. And so you'll see those charges as well. And then you can also see this manager had an advance from their voluntary withholdings account of $1,000. And you can see there was $1,000 that was released, and then there was $1,000 paid to this manager. And so this $1,000 that was released is not actually being paid to the manager right now on this commission statement. It was probably paid earlier in the week based off of a need that they had, and they had to pay something, and so they had to get some money released. And then you can also see we have the general liability package, which is basically the insurance you sign up for from Vector. You're going to have a few of those charges through the course of the summer, and it's really important to have business insurance, so that way if the office burns down, you're going to be compensated from your insurance company for all of the stuff you lose, all those sample kits you might lose if something like that happened. Then you've got $500 going into this branch manager's mailer withholdings. So by the way, keep in mind this manager, this branch saved $500 just for their mailers this week. That's cool. It's cool to be able to save $500 on 1 week's paycheck. Now they also had $5 go towards Craigslist ads. They also had some branch withholding money going in, and they had some mailer withholdings. Sorry, and I misspoke. This was some money transferred into their mailer withholdings, the 500. They saved $200 for mailers. So they have 1% of their paychecks going towards mailers, or 1% of their office, I should say. Then they have 3% of their office being saved. So they have 3% voluntary withholdings. And so this branch saved $582 towards their voluntary this week. And then they also had 1.5% going in towards a chargeback account. And then they had another 5% going in for total tax as well. It's actually half a percentage going in for total tax. So altogether, $1,600 in charges. But if you look at how much of this was legitimate savings, we've got 200, 200, 580, 290, and 15. Yeah, like $1,100 of money that this branch saved of that 1,600. And in essence, they had $500 of real charges and about $1,100 of money saved this week. And that leaves them, so if you look at, they had $3,200 or $3,100 of earnings, $1,600 of charges. So that means this manager actually was paid $1,500 in their commission account that week. But they saved $1,100 as well. And that's one of the things that you want to focus on as a manager, is being as aggressive as you can on the withholdings. So you have just the right amount coming into your account to pay all your bills, and all the rest gets saved. And that's how you're going to save $5, $10, $15, $20,000 in a summertime. Now, if you look down at the bottom here, you can see all the different withholdings accounts that this branch has. They've got $700 from a branch they put out. They've got a chargeback fund. They've got their mailer withholdings. They've got total tax, and they also have voluntary withholdings there. So hopefully that sheds a little bit of light on how the commission statements are structured, and that makes sense. We'll open up for questions at the end if you do have any questions on that. So let's talk about what I would suggest for these withholding percentages. For mailer withholdings, I believe in Eastern region, and Kathy, you can speak up on this. Is there a mandatory 1 or 2% mailer withholding?
Yeah, everyone's is different, but yes.
Okay. Yeah. So it's going to be different based on the division, the region. In most regions, it's 1 or 2% is mandated that you actually save it for mailers. So that way, when it's time to send mailers, you have money there to send mailers if your territory allows for that. Now, when it comes to total tax, what I would suggest, this is one that I would write down, and just, you know, when it's time for the summertime, it's time to set up your withholding percentages, 5 to 10% total tax withholdings. You got to make sure that you save money to pay your taxes at the end of the year. I know it's never fun paying taxes, but it's a good thing to pay taxes because it means you were profitable, and you want to make sure you have that money set aside to do that. And I recommend in the beginning of the summer, most of you could probably get away with 5%, but for sure, June on, I'd probably recommend it be at 10%. And make sure that you say you want 10% total tax withheld, not tax. Tax is different. If you say tax withholdings, they will do a percentage of your CPO, which 10% of your CPO of your office is equivalent to about 40 to 50% of your paycheck. So don't do that. 10% total tax is equivalent to 10% of your actual income. And that's really what you're going to be paying taxes on. And then for voluntary, you saw that branch on the other page, their voluntary was at 3%, which at the beginning of the summer is pretty high. For a reference, 2% voluntary withholding is equivalent to saving about 10% of your paycheck. So what I suggest is in the beginning of the summer, start at 1 or 2%, depending on what your DVM suggests. And then as the summer goes on, I would try and aggressively, systematically try and move it up. Try and move it up to 2.5%, 3%, 4%. There's some managers that come July, if you've really been cranking and producing a lot of CPO, you can put your voluntary at 6%, 8%, and really save a lot of money. in those scenarios. So talk to your DVM though about what's appropriate. And you just want to kind of walk that line of err on the side of saving more. You can always ask Vector to release it if you need to, than having way too much come into your account and being tempted to splurge that week. And then for your branch overrides, what this is, if you end up opening an office this summer and then you put a branch out next summer, or some of you on the call might have a branch going out this summer, the default that Vector is going to do is they're going to save 2% of it. And they're going to pay you the other 3%. What I would recommend is save all 5%. Tell Vector to save all 5%, and it'll just be sitting there for you at the end of the summer. And it'll just be a nice little nest egg for you. All right, let's dive in with sample kits. And again, I know that this could change based on the summer and how things flow. But if you guys do end up getting back into a physical office here in the next month, it's all going to be relevant again. And it's going to just go back to normal. And so you want to make sure you run a clean program that makes sure that you don't ever get charged for anything that you don't need to be charged for. And in my opinion, getting charged for a sample kit is a 100% unnecessary expense that creates zero CPO for you. So it's an expense you want to avoid at all costs. And I love this quote from Ron Carson. He says, you should systemize the predictable so that you can humanize the unpredictable. And I assure you, as a manager in Vector, you're going to have a lot of unpredictable events that happen literally every day. And so you want to, but some of the things that we know are going to happen, we're going to have to order base pay every week. We're going to have to order sample kits every week. We're going to have to do inventory. We're going to have to manage the admin functions of the office every single week. So you should put some systems in place to allow you to be profitable and not get charged more than you need to. So a couple tips here for the sample kit program. Number one, make sure every sample kit in your office gets a tag on it. And so this is something that I'd go to any hardware store off, Home Depot, Lowe's, get some key chain tags, and you want to put these on all of your sample kits. And you'll notice if you can't read this, it says property of Vector, and it's got a phone number. And this phone number is either, it should be your office phone number or the number that they're going to be able to reach you at. And then this manager also puts a little tag on the sample kit as well. I don't think you need to do both, but you certainly can. I think it's great because it says property of Vector Marketing. That's really good for their parents to see, by the way, when it's sitting at their house, or the roommates or their significant others, to see that it's not theirs. And then it has all of your office information on there. And then there's a sample kit number on here. And frankly, the sample kit number is just a number you're going to create. I'll kind of show you how I do that. So that's the next tip, which is have a system for tracking those individual kits and who you gave them to. And it doesn't need to be complex. And there's a sample agreement sheet that you should hopefully be having all of your reps in training sign, or at least reviewing it with them. And on the bottom of it, there's a check-in, check-out section. And that's how I used to manage it when I ran an office. I had a big 3-ring binder, and every single sample agreement, I 3-hole punched it, put it in that thing. And whenever a rep wanted to come in and check in their kit, I had to go flip through that thing, find their sheet, check them in, check them out. So I recommend just a Google sheet or a spreadsheet on some level is really simple, really easy. And when you launch someone from training, you put their name, put what sample kit they got. And this C101, the C is for the campaign. So campaign 1, and this is the first kit I'd give out of my training of campaign 1. And I would do that until I get to campaign 2. And then those sample kits get C2, and then they start at 1 and go up until the campaign's over. And the most important thing is that you have a system that makes sense for you and your assistant managers. And then when you launch out that kit, check it, put the date that rep checked it out, which should be the day of training. And then if they ever need to check it back in, they're going to put the date in there. And this is something that you and all of your assistant managers are going to have access to this Google Doc. So that way, if a representative ever comes in to check in their kit, everyone has access to this shared spreadsheet, and they can say, okay, Susie's checking in her kit on this day. And then if she comes back the following week to check it back out, you can check it out. And it's just important to know who has what kits in your office. And if they were checked in, it's important to be able to have a system to notate that they were checked in. So you're not calling that rep 2 weeks later like, hey, you never turned in your kit. And they're like, yeah, I did. I gave it to Beth, and she said she'd get it taken care of. So you want to keep track of the kits for yourself. You also have to keep track of the kits for Olean. So if you're not familiar with how this process works, once a month during the summer, and as long as you're running an office, you're going to have to verify the number of kits that are in your office. And this is where managers get into trouble sometimes, is if they accidentally give out some kits to reps on their team and they don't notate that, then Olean assumes those kits are still in your office. So if you call to verify with Olean and say, I've got 6 kits in my office, and they're like, well, no, you actually should have 8. You say, well, I only have 6. They're going to say, okay, well, we'll just charge you for those other 2 then. Thanks for verifying. And that's kind of how it works. And so you want to make sure that your number is always accurate when you verify your kits, and the number that Olean thinks you have in your office is the number that you have in your office. And it's easy to do as long as you keep track of it. So this is a form. This sample kit log is a form that's free. It's on Vector Connect. You can print it off whenever you want it. And I recommend keep it in the closet or the cabinet where you keep all your sample kits. But basically, when Olean sends you a box of sample kits, it's going to come in, and you're going to notate how many kits were in that order. And then when you have a training class, you're going to put how many kits did you give out that day. So if we started with 8, and I gave 4 out of this training class on September 12th, I've got 4 left in my office. 2 days later, one of those reps from training finally actually got their demos booked so I could give them a kit as well. So I gave them another one, and now I'm down to 3 kits in my office. So if I was to verify with Olean this month, I would say I've got 3 kits. So it's important that you keep track of this as well as you're going throughout the course of the month. And it's just something you got to do once a month. And you got to do it with Olean, and it is important. And you heard me reference it, but you should keep all of your sample kits in a locked area. You just never want someone getting sticky fingers and walking off with a sample kit for their Uncle Joe who wanted some. And you want to make sure that you keep your investment protected. So if you do not have a closet in your office that can lock, you want to make sure that you order this sample cabinet from Vector Connect. It's, I believe, $250 or $280, somewhere around there. And it's a nice locking cabinet. You can put your sample kit log in there. I used to have a row for like kits that were getting checked in, but I wanted to keep them available to be checked back out to the rep who checked them in. And then you've got like new kits and then kits that need to be returned, and you can organize it any way you want. But it's important to have an area where they can be locked. All right. Some final tips here on managing this sample kit program. 1, make sure that you sign up for the company's insurance program. It's something you just have to basically sign up for it. And I've seen some managers that just forgot, didn't do it, and you're probably going to get called by Olean if you don't do it, but it's just something that you want to make sure that you have to protect yourself. Number 2 is do make sure that you use a sample kit log to stay compliant with Olean. That's the one that I was just explaining. Next, make sure your kits are locked up. This next one might seem very simple and really kind of something that everyone might do, but there are some managers that don't do this. They don't cover the sample agreement in training, and they don't have everyone in their training class sign it, which I'm not sure how you guys are handling signing things right now virtually, but you for sure need to at least make sure this is covered. This is the sheet that basically says if you go a week without turning in an order, you need to check in your sample kit. That's the key piece, by the way, that needs to make sure you convey in training. And there's a way you can say that that doesn't freak reps out. And I would just say, watch your manager run that section in training where they cover that sheet. And how do they say it in a way that makes it okay and seem really normal? And so that way, if they go a week without turning in an order and you say, hey, by the way, like we talked about in training, if you're going a week without turning in an order, we'll have to have you come in and meet with one of the managers in the office, and we can check in your kit. And then we'll basically just check it right back out to you. We'll just have to get you a couple demos booked up or whatever your protocol is in your division. It's important that their experience with the sample kit meets their expectation from training. And that's one of the things that is easy to bypass as a manager, just thinking like, they're going to assume to know the rules. And not only is it important to cover the sample agreement in training, but then it's important after training to make sure that you actually follow through on what you say is the protocol. Because if you tell them, hey, if you go a week without turning in an order, you have to turn in your kit. And then their first week or two, they go a week without turning in an order, and you never bring it up, which happens probably more times than I think most managers would care to admit. You're sending a message about what is okay and what you're willing to tolerate. And whether you realize it or not, that can lead to a lot of bad habits that start to form in your team because you were not willing to hold them accountable like you told them you would. This next one is make sure that if you are giving out a sample kit, which I understand if all of your reps are virtual, you might not be giving a physical kit. But when you do get back to a point where you are, make sure that you get 3 character references from everybody before you give them a kit. And those are typically family members, moms, dads, grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles. Those are the types of references you're really looking for. And you for sure need a phone number and an email address for those contacts. And those are what you and your assistant managers will utilize if you ever have a rep that goes dark and they're not returning calls, they're not turning in orders, and you can't get a hold of them. You're going to reach out to those character references to see if they can help you get in touch with them. And it's very effective. It works really well. Again, sometimes I see new managers that don't do that. And so they don't have the references to call to get sample kits back. And if they haven't been doing some of these other things, it can get a little hairy. The next one, make sure you use the sample kit tracking sheet to manage your individual kits. And then know how to handle if a rep does go 1 or 2 weeks without an order. And what I would suggest is talk to your DM or your DVM about what is the protocol in your division. What's the best way to approach it? What's the best way to bring it up? And in most scenarios, you can almost always use, if they had a week without an order, you can almost always use as an opportunity to have a conversation about how they can get an order this week, and you can generate CPO with it. And there's a lot of positives that come from it based on how you approach it with your rep and not making them feel bad for not having an order for a week. So this last one here is make sure you don't wait too long to call references. You can't wait a month or 2 after not hearing from the rep to call the references. And I'll just let you know from when I used to run an office, if I ran training and someone didn't show up to advanced training and they didn't call, I was probably calling one of those references that day to make sure everything was okay. And that was legit. 99% of the time, everything was perfectly fine. They just were not there. And they had $400 worth of product that I was liable for. And I wanted to make sure that I knew where it was. And that's just simply protecting my own investment. This next one is how to maximize profitability when it comes to base pay. And I'm going to keep this part pretty simple because the number one thing that influences this is being a great trainer. The managers who understand the key sections of training at a deep level and they're confident running at least those key sections, which I'm sure in your management training, you've learned about the sections of training that are probably most important. Now this, by the way, since all of you are kind of making this virtual transition, there's this unique situation right now where all of you basically you have an opportunity to kind of treat it like a new manager and learn it and get a chance to become a master of the virtual training program. And there are managers who've been running virtual training for a year or 2 now. And if you haven't been reaching out to them, yeah, that could be a really great action step over the next week or 2 or 3 of managers that you could try and reach out to get some tips of things that really in the beginning maybe they struggled with, and what do you feel has helped with productivity and having a successful fast start when training representatives virtually. So I would just say not only is it about knowing the key sections of training, but do you really feel comfortable how to run a virtual training right now? And my guess for a lot of you, the answer is no right now, and that's okay. Most of the company is there. But there are people who are confident with it and are experiencing some great levels of success doing it. So I would be really proactive of trying to get those answers now before you go out, and be thinking about it now. Next, make sure that you do have the admin hour in your schedule. There's a lot of can-dos in your schedule. Paying your reps base pay every week has to be a must-do. There literally can't be one week that it doesn't happen. Just like all of you, if you had one week where Vector just got busy and didn't pay you, I'm sure there'd be a lot of strong emotions attached to that action. And your reps will feel that way with you. And unfortunately, the only person that it's going to be responsible is going to be you. It ultimately falls on you as the manager to make sure that it's getting done. And the third tip here is don't delegate out base pay your first summer. I'm all for delegating, but for your first summer, I think you want to become the expert of how you should do base pay. And that's why I think it's valuable to have an AM part of your admin hour with you during the summer, so they can learn how you do base pay. They can learn how you verify demos. They can learn how, what are your criteria for when you should verify demos versus just paying the rep the base pay out. And that leads me to my next point, is make sure that you have a process and a protocol for when to verify demos. Just like you want to have a process for when you should call a rep's references if they go X amount of time without an order, you want to have a process for when a rep turns in a qualified presentation report and there's X amount of appointments with very few sales or no sales, when do you verify? Is that 4 demos without a sale? Is that 6 demos without a sale? Is that 10, 8? What is it? And I would ask your manager what the protocol is in their office and, get a sense of that. But it's important. And then you'll notice it says be open and honest with representatives. So if you ever have a rep that comes in and turns in a qualified presentation report, it's like 10 demos, no sales, or 10 demos, 1 sale, just be honest and say, hey, just so you know, when we have this many appointments with that few orders, the company's probably going to verify these appointments. And so just for the sake of not having to ask questions that aren't necessary, is there anyone on the list that was either retired or maybe not working full time? That's a really good question to ask, because it's going to let you know right then and there, hey, was 4 of these your grandma's friends that are retired? And that might be very well the scenario. And those might be great people to go see, as you all know, but we can't pay base pay for them because it's not a qualified demo. And you told them that in the interview, and you probably told them that in training as well. So again, it's just going back to making sure their experience meets their expectation. And there will be reps that will try and just see what happens. And it's through that process, when you bring it up front, they'll be like, oh yeah, well, these 2 are my grandma's friends and they're retired though. So I thought we could see them. It's like, yeah, you can. We just can't pay them base pay because, like we said, in order for them to be qualified for the base pay, they do have to be working full time. And that should be familiar to them if you said that in training in the interview, which you did. So another question I always like to ask is there any of the appointments on this sheet that were in the house at the same time? Because they might have 3 separate demos and you'll find out they were all in the same house on the same day and they're like 3 hours apart. It was like one after the other. Well, that's a group demo, and we all know that we can't pay for group demos, but reps will try and do that all the time. And so just keep that in mind. They do a demo with, their aunt, or their cousin, and then their cousin's grandma's over there. And so they end up doing 2 demos, and it's a group demo in that scenario. And so you want to make sure that you're just upfront with them on those things. So those are some tips that I think ultimately help base pay the most. The thing that really brings base pay down the most is making sure that, 1, you have a solid understanding of training, and 2, make sure that you're not paying for demos that you shouldn't be paying for. And then have an admin hour in your schedule to make sure that you don't forget to verify those demos and pay the base payout. All right. And then I'm going to kind of finish things up here with rising stock. And again, if you're if you're not familiar with our program, Adam Stock, the founder of our company, was a district manager for Cutco for many, many years. He has a master's in financial planning. He actually has his own financial planning firm in Chicago. And when he ran an office, he never did like crazy CPO numbers, but he was always very profitable. And he just realized that a lot of the other DMs he was running an office with that produced more CPO weren't as profitable as he was. And he realized that there was just a lot of managers when it came to just basic financial management and how to view the numbers that their office was producing like a business owner. There was just a lot of areas of opportunity. And that was really kind of where Rising Stock was born. And every coach that works for Rising Stock was a branch or a district manager. We were all district managers actually. And so we all understand exactly what it's like to be in your shoes, to run your business, the way that you run your business, and what the expenses should or shouldn't look like in terms of those numbers. So we have two separate programs. In terms of management-based programs, we have branch and the district manager program. For both programs, we are going to be putting together a monthly profit and loss report for you. Because in a nutshell, what Rising Stock is a bookkeeping company geared towards FSMs and managers in Cutco. And they are in essence keeping the books for you and putting together monthly P&L reports so you as the business owner will understand where all of the money in your business and personally is going. And what's really nice about it, and what it's really going to probably do for you every year, it's going to save you an enormous amount of time when it comes to taxes. Because at the end of the year, this P&L report is going to be categorized in a way that you can just give it to your accountant and they're going to be able to file your taxes for you. And if you didn't have an organized way of doing this, you would be spending hours every single month trying to do it, or dozens of hours at the end of the year trying to do it. And even if you like spending hours every month looking at every account that you have and every little bit of money that you spent and putting it onto a spreadsheet and then categorizing it, even if you liked doing that, you shouldn't do that as a manager, because there are a lot of other activities that will produce a lot more CPO for you. I'm a big fan of like delegating out, the work that can be delegated out. And this is for sure one of those things, in my opinion, that should be delegated out. Now, if you're a branch, you're also going to get a weekly profitability podcast, which is going to be hosted by Robert Gonzalez. I know many of you know Robert. He was a Silver Cup district manager, and he is going to basically be giving you tips. It's going to be in a podcast that's probably 10 to 15 minutes long. You can listen to it on your way into the office, and it's going to be relevant for you that week. Now, if you're a DM, you will also get these podcasts as well. But if you're a DM, you will also receive a monthly one-on-one coaching call. So you're also going to be getting a little more one-on-one attention from one of our profitability coaches. Patty James is the primary manager that works with DMs in Eastern region, but Robert Gonzalez does as well. So basically, there's going to be three parts to this formula. There's going to be you, there's going to be your account rep, and your account rep is the person that's actually going to put together your P&L report every month. And then if you're a DM, you will also have a profitability coach that you're going to be working with as well. And if you are one of our clients already, there's a good chance you're already working with one of our account reps. This is our account rep team. Most of them have been with us for 6 to 10 years. They've been doing it for a real long time. And then our coaches, like I said, we've got Patty James, who is a Hall of Fame Cutco manager, still holds the record for the most new business in the fall for a district manager, or for a new district manager. And then myself, and then we also have Robert Gonzalez as well. So basically, the way this process will work during the month is at the beginning of the month, your account rep is going to go into Vector Connect and they're going to download your commission statements. They're going to download all of your charges that Vector charged you on your commission statements that month. They're also going to have access to every checking account and credit card that you have. I remember when I signed up for Rising Stock, that felt really like nerve-wracking to me. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally giving my username and password for like my checking account and my credit cards to someone that I don't know. And that just felt totally insane to me. But the reality is, if you were a business owner and you had a bookkeeper, you would have to give them access to the financial data. And for most of you as a young 20-something manager, your financial data happens to be housed in your personal checking account and on your credit card accounts. So they're going to log in to all of your different accounts, and they're going to write down every single transaction into your P&L. And they're going to know what most of those charges are, because they're the same pretty much every month. Like your landlord's name's not going to change. You know, your cell phone company's probably not going to change. So when they see that charge every month, they're going to know where to categorize it. However, there's always going to be some charges that they don't know what it is. Maybe there's a $35 charge at the grocery store, and that's an amount where it's hard to know, was that personal groceries or was that like food you bought for training? And so they're going to ask you, they're going to have a 5 to 10 minute call each month, and they're going to go through each of those random expenses that they're unsure on and say, hey, that $35 charge at Safeway back on May 12th, was that personal groceries or was that for your office? That was for my office. Okay, great. And they're going to know where to categorize it at that. And then after that call takes place, they're going to send that report out to you. And then if you're a DM, you will also have your coach is going to get that P&L as well. So that way, when you have your monthly coaching call, you can review that with your coach, and they can look at it with you and help you realize where some of the areas of opportunity are, or if there's any questions on anything, you can ask them about it. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how the program works. I do want you to write down this URL. This is where you're going to go to sign up for Rising Stock. Since Eastern is not having a physical conference, we are going to have all of you sign up for the service.
By the way, well, two things. One, we're in Central Region, or Southwest Region. Sorry, I'm like, we're in the center.
Oh, sorry. Well, sorry. In my mind, Kathy, you've always been Eastern, so I know. That's
100%.
accurate thinking. My bad.
I am Southwest.
Yeah.
So we're not having a conference, but we are going to do for all the managers the same thing where I'm just going to get that money to Adam directly. So,
yes. So you're going to be prepaying, and then it's going to come out of their startup.
I'm gonna pay the branches out of theirs. The DMs we can pay too much. What's the final cost for? I know that normally Adam stock for branches for the summer is $440. Because of everything going on, Adam is just cutting that in half, which is awesome. Right. So it's $220. That's already in your startup, which I'm going to explain your monies when we hang up here with James. And then district managers, what's the amount for districts?
So the normal rate is
$189 a month or something?
Yeah, it's normally $159 a month, but during the summer of 2020, so May through August, it's going to be $80 a month for DMs.
Okay, so we should probably get that out of your guys' startup as well, because it's not far from the branches. The branches says $220, you guys would be $320. So I'll just take it out of there and prepay the summer to Adam out of the startup money.
Great. So when you guys go to that URL, just basically pick your region, Southwest, not Eastern, pick your DVM, and then you're going to fill in all your information, including your Vector Connect username and password. Make sure you put your username, not your rep number, unless your username is your rep number. And then you just specify basically right here. If you're a DM, you can pay for the whole summer all at once in one fell swoop, and that's $318. That's the price. That's the price after the discount. Or you can pay $80 a month. No matter what option you sign up for, nothing's going to get charged until June 15th. And again, Kathy's going to prepay for you guys, which is fantastic. That's great. But if you're a DM and you're signing up on the monthly basis versus prepaying, nothing is going to start getting charged until June 15th. And that June 15th charge is really for the coaching call and the P&L that you got in May. So we bill a month after the service takes place. And if you didn't catch it, the password that you do have to type in to be able to proceed past the first page is 1949. So,
what year is that?
Stop it. All right. Any questions at all?
That was a lot.
Yes, it was. Thanks for hanging in there.
So I know you kind of hinted at it, or not hinted, like just said it a lot during the whole process that a lot of this is going to be kind of dependent on, like, you know, because of COVID and, you know, us not opening offices. Like, so pretty much everything from the sample kit one until or if we have a physical location is all dependent on that. So
Yeah, and basically that section of the message too, I put in a little PDF and I sent it to Kathy. So she can send it to you, you can save it for your computer, and then if and when you're opening your physical office and you're giving sample kits out, definitely review it again at that point in time.
Kathy, I have a question on that. So if they're running virtual offices, is there a way we can get them some sample kits so that way if, you know, let's say COVID ends and, you know, everything's back up and running, they can get sample kits out to their current team and stuff like that, and they're not having to wait and do more.
I don't know that we've discussed that yet, but I'll put that on a thing to ask. That
So-
wouldn't be till soon, but well, I'll put that on my.
What's that, Stephen?
Yeah, so in regards to the kind of with the not necessarily, but not the sample kit, the base pay, is there something that you've noticed is a good way for tracking or calling on people for checking virtual appointments for like is it just the same process, just the sit down and ask them, hey, did you show to a qualified person, or is there anything?
Yeah, I'm sure there is, and to be honest, I am, I left the company in 2015, and so there's been so much progression on the virtual program, and I'm sure even rapidly more so in the last couple of weeks, that I'm sure that there's probably some resident experts on it right now that I would probably reach out to over me. My gut says you should definitely still verify if the numbers aren't adding up, if there's some patterns there, where they're consistently happening, but what that protocol looks like might be a little different. And so I would just reach out to your DM, DVM, or someone who's currently running a good recruiting operation and ask them. Because if they're recruiting a lot of people, they're probably experiencing all facets of base pay payout.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I've heard some branches last year would quote unquote like threaten the reps who didn't turn in the sample kits to turn in the sample kits by calling the authorities like, hey, if you don't give us back our sample kit, that's hundreds of dollars, we don't want to call the authorities.
Yeah. No, I personally don't think that's a good idea, because I always want to leave people with a good impression of me and Vector. Whether they decide to keep working here or not, I want them to have a good experience with me. I also don't want to threaten empty threats, because what are you going to do? Like, you got charged $50 for the kit. You're going to spend $500, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 to go get a lawyer and take them to a small claims court? Probably not. So in essence, and if you call the police, they're going to say, yeah, if it's $50, you're going to, it's one of those things that you could, I don't know, it's just it's not worth the time and mental energy that you would pour into that to get $50 back. So what I always resorted to was trying to be authentic and genuine and just say, hey, I literally got charged for your sample kit from Olean last week because I was technically the one responsible for it. And I know that you decided that maybe this isn't the right fit for you right now, which I totally understand. I wanted to see if you'd be willing to at least check in the kit so I can get refunded for the amount that Vector charged me.
Okay.
That was almost always what I did, and they usually responded really well. And most of the time they're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yes, I'll bring it in next week. So does that work every time? No, but I did try threats as an early manager, and I always just felt bad after. I just felt like I was just like, I don't like how I feel trying to operate that way. So. Any other questions? All right, well, thanks for having me, everyone.